In a lot of ways, the MMO genre draws its inspirations from traditional tabletop gaming. Just look back to the earliest days of Dungeons & Dragons, and you're going to find a whole host of similarities linking this timeless hobby to the traditional MMO we see today. One of the clearest indicators of this inspiration is the dungeon crawl. You've all experienced it before, and most of you have played through enough to understand beyond a shadow of a doubt that no two dungeons are created equal. There's a good chance you've played through some pretty bad ones too, fraught with infuriating challenges, poorly designed maps, and unimaginative encounters. That said, most of you have at least one favorite too, a dungeon that's going to stick with you for the rest of your gaming career. Today, we're going to pay homage to a few of those that are some of the best, most beautiful, and most creative instances in MMO history. Realm of the Fae Rift. We'll start with a mid-level dungeon from Rift, which is, simply put, pure scenery porn. Upon entering the instance from Silverwood, you'll find yourself standing in a beautiful, pristine forest that well and truly looks like it's not been touched by mortal hands in centuries, if ever at all. Don't let yourself get too distracted by the scenery, though. You most assuredly are not welcome here, as the dungeon's numerous denizens will happily remind you. Blackwing Lair, World of Warcraft. In my mind, Blackwing Lair is still one of the most incredible dungeons Blizzard has ever created. Situated at the top of Blackrock Mountain, itself an epicenter of several instances and raids. Nelfarion's fortress at the time had some of the best designed, most challenging boss fights ever seen in World of Warcraft. Truth be told, still does. Though those fights have fallen far by the wayside as Blizzard has pumped out new endgame content and dragged the level cap ever higher. Tactical encounters aside, the dungeon also boasts a rather fantastic, sinister aesthetic, which, while not as downright dazzling as some of the others on this list, nevertheless has entrenched it firmly in the minds and hearts of WoW veterans. Karazhan, World of Warcraft. Another personal favorite of mine is the Dread Tower of Karazhan. This sprawling, non-linear instance is one of the most immersive and atmospheric I've ever experienced, owing up to both the fantastic soundtrack and awesome graphic design. The learning curve was perfectly set up, and the events and bosses were both challenging and diverse. As an added bonus, for anyone ballsy enough to glitch underneath the dungeon, it's home to one of the most terrifying areas in World of Warcraft. The Maelstrom Prison, Star Wars: The Old Republic. This next one comes from Star Wars: The Old Republic and is memorable enough for the narrative reasons alone. Watch out, folks, here be the spoilers. The Maelstrom might be one of the least hospitable eras in space, a huge cloud of charged space dust and raw energy, which makes traditional navigation next to impossible. For this reason, the Sith Empire decided to hide within it one of their most dangerous, most legendary prisoners, the redeemed Sith Lord Revan, protagonist for the first Knights of the Old Republic. It's difficult to describe the feeling one gets when, after defeating an antagonist who has dogged their steps countless levels, they find themselves standing face to face with a living legend. If you play Star Wars: The Old Republic, this is something you probably have to experience for yourself. Castle Mistmoore, EverQuest. Our next entry on this list, hailing from EverQuest, is home to the vampire followers of Lord Mayong Mistmoore. It's also one of the most eye-poppingly beautiful zones in the game. Not only that, it features an entertaining, creative, and engaging layout, filled with false walls and hidden passages. It was one of the best of its time, and stands up to the scrutiny even today. Elendil's Tomb, Lord of the Rings Online. Offering up equal parts narrative scale and aesthetic appeal, Elendil's Tomb stands out as one of the most memorable dungeons in Lord of the Rings Online. What's more, though much of the dungeon is a fairly simple run, giving you time to admire the scenery of course, the bosses are anything but. Nornagol in particular is probably one of the most challenging encounters you'll have dealt with up to this point, while Mordenborr is anything but a pushover. City of Arah, Guild Wars 2. Anyone who's played through this dungeon won't dispute its spot on the list. The city of Arah represents the final encounter in the storyline of Guild Wars 2, for the moment anyway. The endless hordes of undead threaten to overrun the rest of the world. You are the only force that can fight them. Should your desperate last stand on the island of Or fall, all is lost. The cleansing of Or is incredible, by the way, and the final boss, while not terribly challenging, is nothing if not memorable. The Watchtower, DC Universe Online. Imagine for a moment that you're a pretty big shot villain in a city filled with superheroes, many of them played by other players. Now imagine further that you've the chance to travel to the Justice League headquarters, clean their clocks, and leave the whole place as a mound of flaming rubble. That includes beating the living crap out of Superman, who may be one of the most irritating superheroes in history. Now from that, I'm certain it's plain to see why the Watchtower is probably hands down the best instance in DC Universe Online. Well, that concludes this list. What do you folks think? Any favorites to add of your own? Please leave them in the comments. Don't forget to leave us a like and subscribe and share if you liked, and stay tuned to Attack Gaming for daily content. Thank you.
What's up, Attack? I'm Sky, and today I have this Hitchhiker's Guide to Tamriel. I have this compendium of information on the Elder Scrolls Online that I think new players, and maybe even a lot of veteran players, are going to really enjoy. I personally have dived into all of these different links, and yes, they all check out, they're all really good, but the game is still new, so hey, if you want to start up the game, go through these guides, play the game a little bit, become advanced.